Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Hey, Caroline, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Bryce. I have a question for you.
Sure.
It's a bright summer, sunny day, nice and hot out there. What freezy flavor are you going for? If you could choose any, they're all sitting there in a little tub. The ice is melting on them. Which one are you reaching for?
I'm going for orange right away.
Good call.
Yeah. If I gotta maybe elbow somebody to get out of the way and it's orange and blue left or something like that, I'm doing everything I can to get orange. How about you?
Orange is definitely there, but I think I don't want an elbow. So I also like red. I'll take a solid red. So yeah.
Can we both agree though that the white coconut is the worst one though?
It's the least interesting to kind of.
Well, Caroline,
I disagree.
Oh, that's our...
Sorry, I had to jump in from the peanut gallery. Sorry if I ruined that.
No, that's all good.
This is good. We need to have a diverse opinions on the show.
Absolutely. Well, welcome to the show, Vicky. You were last on our sci-fi books episode. It's been a while. I think that was episode 89, Caroline put in our notes here today. So welcome back to the show. And I love how you're just I'm not going to sit idly by and listen to
trash talk coconut.
Yeah. So that would the coconut be your go-to freezy flavor?
I think any freezy flavor. I think that being picky about freezies is a fool's game. Take what you get, and there's joy in the variety. So I would go blindly into the freezy pile.
Wow. So if everything's sitting there in a nice tub of ice, you're not necessarily reaching for coconut, but you just blindly, if coconut's pulled, you're cool with that.
I'm totally cool with that. Though I will say if there's ice cream available instead, I'm totally going for ice cream first.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, definitely.
This is giving me flashbacks to when I was little, or younger, I guess. My sister and I would listen to this book on cassette called It's Nice to Be Nice. And it was just a bunch of little helpful hints about how to be a polite person in the world. And the one that has really stuck with me is that if you're offered something like a bucket of freezies, perhaps, although I think in the book and cassette it was a fruit plate. I think that's what they used. That the polite thing to do is to take the one that's closest to you and not, reach and try to get the biggest one or something like that. But if there are a variety of items, like there's grapes and strawberries and oranges and different things on this fruit plate, instead of reaching across to ask for the plate to be turned so that you can then take what you would like. So who knew that all these years later I would be sharing this information in a freezy, imaginary freezy scenario?
Yeah. It all comes full circle.
I've got to say, if cantaloupe is facing you, that's definitely cause for plate rotation.
We can agree on that, Vicky. Absolutely.
I like cantaloupe.
That cantaloupe that's definitely getting the plate turned though. But and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't just go fist first into the bucket and root for orange. But if there was orange on top, I'm grabbing it.
No, I'm not trying to impugn any of us. I think that that was just something that was triggering a memory that stuck with me for a very long time and doesn't come up very often. So,
no.
Yeah.
So
I challenge you both to go for the blind grab next time you're presented with a freezy bucket. Try it out.
I like it.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it. It'd be tough, but we'll see. I'll think of you next time I'm in that situation, Vicky, and just blindly go in there. But today, though, we are not just talking about freezies. Although with our hot weather, that probably would be a very popular episode. But Caroline, I joked around. It's I would, elbow somebody out of the way to to get an orange freezy. Caroline, I consider you a friend, and for doing this podcast and being a work colleague and everything. And if we were at a party, I would not elbow you to get out to kind of boot you out of the way to grab my orange freezy. And it's important, I think, to talk about friendship. And I think on this show we talk a lot about pop culture and characters and everything. And today, of course, as you probably saw from the episode description, we're talking about the best friends. These are our favorite kind of best friends in pop culture. And once again, Caroline, you'd kind of reached out to EPL staff to get their picks. And once again, staff were all over this one and had a ton of suggestions, right?
It was wonderful. It was so great to see some of their suggestions. There were ones that I had definitely identified as people that or characters that I thought of as having a great friendship. Then there were ones that I'd never heard of, ones I'd forgotten about. So it was just really great. And I'm so happy that we're going to share some of our picks as well as some of those staff picks in the episode today.
Yeah, and our guest today, Vicky, had some awesome picks as well on that list. And I think we're going to definitely find, even though we didn't really necessarily have common ground on the freezy topic, we will have some common ground, I know for sure, at least on one of her picks that we will get to a little bit later on in the show. But before we get there, Caroline, I've got a question for you. I'm going to throw you a different question, though, today.
Okay, I'm ready.
How has your summer reading been going?
My summer reading has been going very well because I've been highly motivated to read. Mm-hmm. And I think that where this question is going is you're going to tell people a little bit about what some of those motivations are.
Most people, of course, they take books on vacation or to the beach or whatever. But can you imagine, though, getting to win prizes just for reading? Well, that's what you can do with Summer Reads 22. So from now until August 27th, both adults and teens can sign up for Summer Reads 22. Keep track of your reading this summer and complete some fun activities to have your name entered to win some great prizes, including gift cards to Edmonton businesses and a signed copy of Mindhunter by John Douglas and The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton, both past guests on Overdue Finds. So you can sign up at epl.ca/summer-reads or visit any EPL branch to pick up your summer reads activity sheet. So Caroline, I know we're both been reading up a storm, and Vicky, how's your summer reading been going?
It's been languishing a little bit in favor of my gardening, but I have a huge stack of holds at home and the next 2 weeks off from work. So one of my plans, I've got a lovely hammock in my backyard. So I'm going to be laying in my hammock and making my way through my pile of holds.
Nice. So you're totally just going to burn through your summer reading hours in no time.
I'm going to do it very efficiently, all in one go.
All right. So before we get talking about our favorite best friends in pop culture, let's share some of our own overdue finds that we've been enjoying since our last episode. Vicky, it's been a while since you've been on the show. What can you recommend to our listeners this week?
Well, I may seem like a little bit of a one-trick pony because my emphasis on sci-fi continues. This will just prove that I was a good guest for the sci-fi episode. Because I have a number of sci-fi recommendations throughout today's episode. So the thing that I have watched most recently that is excellent is the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. It is in our catalog. There's lots of holds on it, but it's just awesome. Michelle Yeoh is the lead in it, and she's just fantastic. There's a lot of humor in the movie, a lot of awesome martial arts, which isn't usually my thing, and just a really good story about family at the heart of it. So I can't recommend it enough. It's really weird in parts, and I love that.
So we actually talked just very briefly about that movie in our last episode. It was a movie, I think, Caroline, have you had a chance to watch it yet?
Not yet, which is why I am still kind of like holding a place for it by the time we reach my December best of the year list.
Yes. So I've seen it. I'm a little torn on it myself. The one thing I did mention to Caroline, though, Vicky, do you watch Rick and Morty?
Oh, of course, yes.
So somebody online said this is like the ultimate like Rick and Morty live action movie, just with the different multiverses and weird kind of versions of people in the film and everything. So I did say though that I think it's like the most original movie to come out this year, and I agree. Like I do, you know, I will say that I think this is a movie that people like when you watch it, you're either going to love it or just not like it, but you have to watch it, and it is incredible. And actually, Vicky, I don't remember the name of the director, but I did see the other day that he because of this movie, he's actually going to be directing the next Avengers movie.
Yes, and apparently I haven't seen his first movie, but it's apparently super duper weird. I think it has a farting corpse as the center of it. Yeah, so I'm not sure that's quite to my taste. But I love this movie so much, not the farting corpse one, but Everything Everywhere All at Once, that I saw it in the theater twice. I saw it with one friend, my best friend, actually. And then I loved it so much that I arranged for my larger friend group to go to it because I needed them to all see it so we could talk about it.
That's awesome. I think that movie you're referencing, the farting corpse one, I think might be Swiss Army Man. It's got like Daniel Radcliffe and I think Paul Dano's in it as well. So yeah, I also have not seen the farting corpse movie, but I clearly need to go watch it.
And just to close the loop on that, the Everything Everywhere All at Once, directed by two Daniels, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert.
Caroline, I know you have not had a chance to watch that movie yet.
Right.
But what have you been enjoying lately?
I have a different movie that came from a recommendation that we talked about on a recent episode, our favorite queer characters. Our guest Levi on that episode mentioned the movie Akron, which is a 2015 movie directed by Brian O'Donnell and Sasha King, and it's the story of Benny and Christopher, two college students who meet at the University of Akron in a football game. They immediately fall for each other, and the first part of the movie is their developing relationship and basically just them being the most adorable thing ever. And then the movie turns when they realize they have a shared tragic event in their past and that they have dealt with to varying degrees. And so the rest of the movie is really them trying to decide if they can continue this relationship and be together and what it means if they are or if they aren't. And it's a lovely movie. The characters, like I say, the relationship is adorable. I mean that in the best way possible. Like I'm watching this going like, oh, I'm rooting for you guys already, and nothing has happened, and I know it's gonna get bad, and I don't want that to happen. But then when it does, it's such a great story with so many interesting themes like grief and forgiveness, connection and truth. A really central one is what we owe to our family as well, and what the character of Benny, in particular, how he is creating his identity independent of his family, but at the same time still deeply, deeply a part of it. EPL has the movie on DVD and also available to stream through Canopy. So
Nice.
definitely highly recommend checking out Akron.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember that being recommended in that episode. So did you watch it just based on that recommendation from Levi?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it before, and then when it came up in the episode and Levi was giving all the details about it, I had to stop myself because I was just like, do they end up together? How does this work? I need to know. And he didn't tell me, which was good for, a decision. But I knew I wanted to watch it. Not a long movie, I think just coming in under under 90 minutes. So, but a really interesting kind of indie film from the last decade.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's always interesting watching those movies, and like, whether it's, a movie like that or a romantic comedy or whatever, or it kind of involves a couple, and you're kind of getting to that hour mark in the movie and you're just like, oh god, something bad has to happen here.
Yeah.
What's it gonna be? So yeah, it's that does sound like a great movie, and it's good to know that we've got a couple different ways you can watch it.
Yeah. So Bryce, what have you been enjoying?
Yeah, I unfortunately do not have a movie pick, believe it or not, this week. I actually have a book pick. The book is called Zero Fail: The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service by Carol Linning. So little known fact about me, I'm a big like American history buff for some reason. It absolutely fascinates me. A few years ago, Cheryl and I went to Washington, D.C., and it remains one of my favorite trips, just going to all the different Smithsonian museums and everything. It's just something that for whatever reason, it's always drawn my attention. So, and kind of with that, I've always been fascinated by the idea of the Secret Service, like these guys and women in dark suits, and their job is to protect the life of the president of the United States. Like they are essentially there really to take a bullet for him. So just that kind of idea of that type of service just really, I've got a lot of respect for it, and it just really fascinates me. So this book actually came out in 2019. So with the Secret Service being in the news lately with kind of allegedly deleting texts around the January 6th insurrection, it kind of made me want to kind of finally pick up this book and learn a little bit more about, the Secret Service. And this book so far has me hooked from page one. The author, who's a reporter, I think it's with the Washington Post maybe. Anyway, she takes you back to the formation of the Secret Service, that happened just after actually the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And originally they were formed not to necessarily protect the president, but to kind of fight counterfeiters. So talks a little bit about kind of the history and how they eventually became kind of more guards for the president of the United States. So we learn about that. The book takes you all the way up to the Obama and Trump years, along with kind of some scandals that happened during the Obama administration. And we learn more about the agents themselves, why they do the job, what it was kind of like protecting different presidents. And also the author kind of paints a story of why maybe the Secret Service isn't as prepared as they should be for a legitimate attack on the president. So for me, like if you're a nonfiction fan and this type of stuff really interests you, you will absolutely love this book. We've got it on ebook, physical, audiobook. So yeah, this is a great one. I haven't been able to put it down.
Sounds really interesting. I love when there are nonfiction kind of explorations of things that always have just kind of been there, and knowing, of course the Secret Service has a history to it. It had to start at some point, but what really that was, and being able to dive in and see how we got to where we are today, or 2019 at least. And it's really fascinating. It's just you see these people in the background and what's their story, and it is really interesting too. Just reading the part the other night about the assassination of JFK, and how, not to blame it on JFK or at all, but they do mention how, at the time the agents, they didn't have enough of them. They were burnt out by all these different public appearances, and Kennedy kind of liked to see how he didn't want the Secret Service agents riding on the limo with him, because then the public couldn't see him and his wife, and a re-election was coming up, and he really wanted to get his face out there, and that possibly could have played a huge part in him being assassinated. So it's little stuff like that in the book that's just really fascinating to me. Very interesting.
All right. So today we're talking about the best friends, and we actually just had International Friendship Day a couple weeks ago on July the 30th. Caroline, I think you've got some fun facts for us on about International Friendship Day, don't you?
Well, I wanted to know a little bit more about it myself, so I took a little deep dive, or maybe a shallow dive, into the origins and discovered they are complicated, like many things. They likely involve the greeting card industry, which I think makes a lot of sense. But there are international or independent friendship days that have sprung up all over the world. And so seeing how each country decided what was necessary and how they were going to celebrate it, there's really I think an interesting history here that's worth getting into. But in 2011, the UN designated July 30th as the International Day of Friendship. So that's the UN observed day. Some countries like Ecuador, Finland, and Estonia celebrate Friendship Day on February 14th as a platonic alternative to Valentine's Day. So if you're not with your romantic partner, you can celebrate with some of your best friends. And in Argentina, it is a huge holiday that rivals Christmas and New Year's. It's celebrated on July 20th, which is tied to the Apollo 11 mission and the idea of the world coming together to see the momentous event of Neil Armstrong landing on the moon and what that meant for the planet of Earth. And in 2005, so many people were messaging and email or calling each other that it took down Argentina's mobile cellular network, which had previously only happened during Christmas and New Year's. So,
Wow.
yeah, big deal.
Big deal. And that was like interesting you say 2005, because really that's like right before I think Facebook really took off, because now it's just like you go on Facebook and that's how you connect with people. And so that is interesting. It's like everybody's got to get on the phone and call their besties. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so I think around the world there are some associations or days with it that have more commercial tie-ins, and then others that really genuinely sprung up out of a celebration of friendship, and I really like that idea.
So obviously today, like we're talking about friendship and pop culture and everything. So when you think about pop culture friendships, Vicky, who comes to mind for you?
The very first pairing that I think of is from one of my all-time favorite TV shows, the TV show that is my comfort watch when things are grim in the world. And that's Fry and Bender from Futurama. I just adore their friendship. Despite the setting and, it's an animated series that takes place in the future and all of that, there's just something about it that resonates as realistic to me. And so one of my favorite lines from the show is Bender, who famously says all the time, "Kill all humans." That's a plot line in a few different episodes and such. So there's one episode in which he says, "All those times I said, 'kill all humans,' I always whispered, 'except one.' Fry was that one, and I never told him so." And, that to me encapsulates everything about friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the pick, by the way, I saw on our staff web, and I was like, 100% yes. Like, and I also love too that they're roommates, and how like the first episode where Fry moves in with Bender, and it looks like essentially Bender just lives in this tiny closet, and Fry's got to be stuck in there with him, but then like realizes that there's actually a closet, and the closet essentially is like an actual living space that Fry can use.
Yeah, I think the roommate friendship dynamic is a pretty common one. Like looking through some of the other recommendations by staff, I think that that's kind of a common theme in at least some of these friendships. I guess it's natural that if you don't have a romantic partner, then your best friend is probably a good choice for somebody to live with.
That was what I first thought of with pop culture friendships, which were Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. And that is a dynamic that I love, which is like the one who gets clearly exasperated by the other one, but there's still so much love as the foundation. I guess it's kind of like similar to like the idea of the odd couple of like one's messy, one's neat, one's loud, one's quiet, one loves pigeons, one sings about rubber duckies, but just though they can like have some spats, they're not rivals by any stretch. So yeah,
Definitely.
How about you, Bryce? Who came to mind for you?
For me, right away, no big shock. Mine is from The Simpsons, and it's Bart and Milhouse. They are the friends that essentially need each other. I think of the episode where Milhouse's mom realizes that Bart is a bad influence on Milhouse, and so she basically doesn't allow Milhouse to play with Bart anymore. So we'll occasionally hear stories about that. I remember as a kid, I don't recall not being able to play with certain friends, but I remember hearing stories like, oh, my mom doesn't want me playing with that kid. And so something that obviously comes up in real life. But, towards the end of the episode, Milhouse's mom, after speaking with Marge Simpson, realizes the boys need each other. They're not necessarily part of the cool group, but they're also not necessarily kind of part of the nerds and everything. So they need each other, and they've been, best friends since as far back as they can remember. So for me, Bart and Milhouse was the friendship that I thought of first thing.
That's why the episode where Bart sells his soul to Milhouse it's an interesting episode for a number of like the way it explores the concept of a soul. But one of the things that I find kind of uncomfortable about that episode is this idea that like Milhouse has the upper hand on Bart.
Yeah.
And that is not their friendship dynamic at all. It's quite unsettling in a way.
Anytime an automatic door doesn't work for me, I think of that episode and worry that something has gone wrong without me realizing it in terms of my soul.
You're like,
For
did
me,
I accidentally
it's the
sell my soul?
automatic hand, like a sink, if the water isn't coming on when I'm like there, especially if someone else is there, and I'm like, I have a soul, I promise.
Yeah.
Vicky, when we asked for staff, you shared some of your favorite TV friendships. Fry and Bender was one. Tell us about some of your other ones.
Well, this is a little more culty. It's not as popular, perhaps, in North America as Futurama is. But I absolutely love the relationship between Dave Lister and Arnold Rimmer from the show Red Dwarf. Like Futurama, it's a show that keeps you think it's ended and then it starts again. So they're still making episodes of it. What I love about this friendship, what's unique about it, is that they don't really like each other, these two, and they have totally the roommate thing going on. The setup of the entire show is that Dave, he is put into stasis because he does something wrong. They're on a mining ship out in the far reaches of the galaxy. And so he's put in stasis. When he wakes up, he's supposed to be in stasis for a few months. He wakes up 3 million years in the future because there's been a radiation leak that has killed everybody else on the ship. So he's stranded in space 3 million years in the future. And the ship's AI, which has gone a little loopy over time, it decides that the best person to bring back as a hologram for his mental health, to keep him sort of on his toes, is his roommate that he quite hated. So it's the two of them in this closed environment making their way through life and irritating each other and dealing with all of the encounters that they have. So I just love that dynamic. They're always nattering at each other, and there's a lot of that roommate stuff happening where Dave is a complete and utter slob, and it drives Arnold crazy. But Arnold is really abrasive, so it's just great. It's a great setup for a comedy.
Nice. I remember, I've never actually watched that show. I do remember, I think, Caroline, you also being a fellow TV geek like myself, I believe Red Dwarf was like one of the very first shows on like YTV when it launched, because I think that's where I first heard about it, and I never watched it. But I love that premise though, of very similar to Futurama, where Fry is frozen and he wakes up, I think it's like 1,000 years in the future or something like that. But yeah, the idea of being woken up after 3 million years and you're kind of stuck with the roommate that you hate is probably not a great idea.
Roommates that do get along were one that was suggested by past guest Christy from Calder, who mentioned the Golden Girls. We've done a whole episode on them in the past, so I know that we don't need to do much convincing, but as Christy said, even the theme song is friendship based. Thank you for being a friend. I love this example because it shows that strong friendships can be formed even later in life. Although they have different personalities and quirks, they accept each other for who they are and support each other no matter what. And that's true. I think that we talk a lot about friendships as kids or when we're younger, or then I think the common way of talking about friendships is often, how do you make friends as an adult, when you're not around people as much, especially over the last few years when we've been even more distanced. But Dorothy, Rose, Blanche, and Sophia all kind of found each other, and it worked for them.
Also, Anne-Marie from Calder, she recommended, and this is another show that we've talked about on the show a lot. Caroline, you joked around with me that essentially we're one pony remark away from becoming a full-fledged Seinfeld podcast. But, you have to think of Jerry, Elaine, George, and Kramer from Seinfeld as well. And like George and Jerry, we know from the show, grew up together, so they're been friends forever. And Jerry used to date Elaine, and they've been able to become friends after that. And Kramer is the wacky next door neighbor to Jerry. He just comes over to steal his food and get in wacky adventures or whatever. But that's another kind of group too that it's not, you look at it and it doesn't seem like it's not like the Golden Girls, where it's like everybody lives together and they learn a lesson at the end of each episode, because Seinfeld is not that show. But they're definitely an unlikely group of friends.
Sorry, Vicky. One piece that I like there is there's an episode where Elaine and George start hanging out a bit more, and at first it's kind of awkward because what are they going to talk about? And it gets at that element of like you're part of a friend group, but maybe not a main friend dynamic. And eventually they just realize that they're going to talk trash about Jerry, and that's what they have in common, and it worked for them.
Yeah, I know what scene you're talking about. I don't remember the exact episode, but like the three of them are going to go to a movie and Jerry can't go for some reason. And it's like, well, you two can go. And they're just kind of like very awkwardly like trying to think of excuses maybe to not go together. So it's very funny.
What's great about Seinfeld is that it's one of those early representations of friendship of people that aren't actually that likable as individuals. Like they're kind of horrible people in their own ways. And you can see those threads in a lot of shows after that. Like one of my favorite TV shows that I think is could not exist without Seinfeld having been there first is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They take that to a whole nother level of unlikability and ridiculousness. But I really see a lot of threads of Seinfeld within that friend group as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. I did not have It's Always Sunny on my list, but yeah, another very funny show. But yeah, it's definitely a group, like all three of them kind of, four of them grew up together. And we also have Frank Reynolds, played brilliantly by Danny DeVito, who, if you watch, like, if you needed a reason to watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, just the idea of Danny DeVito in this show is brilliant. I think it's like one of the, like, best roles of his entire career. Like, he is Frank Reynolds.
He has committed so heavily to that role that I agree. I think that it's his best role. And I actually started watching that show because I saw him on The Daily Show talking about he had just joined it. And I was like, this sounds interesting. And so I PVR'd the show based on the interview with Danny DeVito, and I've never looked back.
Another friendship that got a lot of love from staff, Leslie Knope and Ann Perkins from Parks and Recreation. It was mentioned by Beth, past guest from our collection management department, as well as Melanie from Meadows, also a past guest. We're really doing well with getting a number of staff on the show here. But Melanie said that Leslie Knope and Ann Perkins' friendship is the best. I love how they always hyped each other up. This was one of the first examples I saw on TV of two women frequently having conversations that passed the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test being that there are two female characters in a piece of media who have a conversation with each other about something other than a romantic relationship. So, yeah, I think Anne and Leslie's compliments towards Anne, calling her beautiful mermaid and all kinds of things. They get more and more ridiculous as the show goes on. But I've always thought that Leslie Knope is someone you'd want to have in your corner for sure.
Yeah, everybody needs to have a friend like Leslie Knope. Like, she's not only is she, like, if you called her to help you move, she's doing that, but like, if you got into like a real jam, Leslie Knope has your back.
Yeah. There's another pair that was mentioned on the staff thread that to me is similar in nature, and that's Ilana and Abby from Broad City. I see a lot of parallels with the Leslie Knope situation there because it's such a great representation of young women and their friendship. I just love it. I was introduced to the show when I was in Vegas, and I came back and immediately contacted my bestie and was like, we have to watch this show together because I just haven't seen that many representations of female friendship that felt that real to me and that I could relate to in some ways. Just the ridiculous things that they get up to and the conversations that they have felt more real to me than Leslie Knope. I mean, there is a bit of fantasy in Parks and Rec that Broad City, I feel is a little more realistic.
Broad City, the Abby and Ilana, what I really loved about their characters is that the show gives them the space to be each be multidimensional characters. And, going back to my Bert and Ernie example, like that's pretty, I mean, Bert's uptight and Ernie's, kind of wild, and that's how it's going to be. That's how it's going to be in every single episode. What in Broad City, I thought for sure they would have like one friend who was maybe more serious, more uptight, more like maybe has her life together a bit more, and then another one would be wilder, the one dragging her into these scenarios. No, they are both all of those things, like going full on, and the show gives them that space to be that person in different situations.
They're both kind of hot messes in their own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always save my Bed Bath & Beyond coupons now, just saying.
Speaking of kind of friends that are both kind of like hot messes, so this is a show we don't have in our collection, but it's a show that I recently started watching based on a recommendation from a friend that you should definitely try and go out of your way to find, and that is Detroiters. So Jake from our Stanley Milner branch let us know that Sam and Tim from that show are awesome friends. So in this sitcom about two best friends running a small ad agency in Detroit, they're constantly reminding us that they're best friends, lending an unexpected wholesomeness to the show. We only got 2 seasons of that show, but yeah, it's hilarious. And if you subscribe to Crave, you can watch it on there. But very, very funny show though.
I'm really fascinated that most of the recommendations are based on TV friendships. And I was wondering what about that medium seems to allow for that exploration of friendship maybe a little more deeply than other media.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might just be something as simple as, for example, something like Seinfeld. They have, I think it was just over 200 episodes. And I mean, you just have more long-term storytelling with TV than you do possibly books or definitely movies, not taking into account any like big movie franchises. But yeah, I think it's just you have more time and more episodes to explore that topic, I think.
I think when it is compared to movies specifically, I think in those it is rare that a friendship dynamic would overtake a romantic dynamic. And I think so if there's going to be a central relationship that the main character has, more often than not in a movie, it's going to be a romantic one, and having true platonic friend-based ones is going to be more rare than it. But I agree with Bryce. I think the books too, especially like the books, and we'll get to talking a little later on about some of the ones they mentioned, but the book series that people mention are ones where a relationship can develop and unfold over a period of time, and that is not as easy to do in a shorter element. But I like that. I like thinking about what is it about TV that provides a glimpse into so many different kinds of great friendships.
Couple I just want to give a quick shout out to before we move on that I had on my list. SpongeBob SquarePants and Patrick Starfish, next door neighbors, and those two are friends for life. And one of my favorite comedies, I'm going to go with Larry David, the heightened character of Larry David, and his manager Jeff Green on Curb Your Enthusiasm. So those two, no matter what's happening, whether it's trying to steal a doll's head, maybe it's having to dig another grave for Larry's mother, or just trying to not feel the wrath of Jeff's wife Susie, Larry and Jeff are in it together. So Curb Your Enthusiasm, those two are my picks. There's so many great movies about great friendships. There's even the whole genre of a buddy movie. Caroline, what stands out for you?
I have 2 movies that come to mind. First of all, Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, one of my most favorite movies of all time. Romy and Michelle it's not that they're stuck in high school, they've just been best friends since high school. And 10 years on, they still live together, and now they've been invited back to their high school reunion. They're pumped to go and show everyone their awesome life. And then they realize maybe our life isn't that awesome at all. We're not married, we're living together, we don't have great jobs. So then they set out to prove and maybe invent better lives for them. Mira Sorvino, Lisa Kudrow, amazing actors. We don't have this in our collection, which is the only reason why I I'm not going to talk about this movie for the rest of like an hour because I just love this movie so much. And then my other pick is I don't know. I think this one might be a surprise for people. Singing in the Rain, the 1952 movie starring Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor. As much as it is a show business spoof about the move from silent films to talking pictures, as much as it is a romance between Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly, at its heart, it's really a story of these two guys who have been showbiz partners and friends since their vaudeville days of they do a routine where they're each playing the fiddle, and it's hard to describe, but they're playing each other's. Like Donald O'Connor is bowing Gene Kelly's fiddle and vice versa. It's like that is there a better metaphor for how in sync these friends are than they're literally playing each other's instrument on that? I don't know. I just love them. It's funny. They look out for each other. Theirs is the most solid relationship in that whole movie. So if you haven't seen Singing in the Rain recently, I really recommend checking it out. It's a lot of fun. The musical numbers, highly, highly memorable, and kind of unexpected. It sometimes is definitely, when you're watching an old musical and it's like, why is this musical number happening? And it's really just to show off Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor tap dancing on top of a piano. So
I never realized that movie was a Hollywood spoof. Like, obviously, I'm familiar with the movie, and as I mentioned before, I'm not a musical fan, so it's just never really been a movie high on my list to watch. But might maybe have to give that a look, knowing that it's a Hollywood spoof.
It's very funny. Gene Kelly plays an actor who has had great success with his movies with the famed actress Lena Lamont, who had a voice for silent movies, we will say. And as they struggle with what comes next in Hollywood and everything, it's they came up with some very interesting strategies for how they are going to keep her in the dark while also creating a hit picture. So yeah, I highly recommend checking out Singing in the Rain, and it's actually a secret friendship movie.
There we go. Vicky, how about you? What are some of your favorite friendships from movies?
Well, I'm going to continue my single genre obsession. There is two pairs of friendships in one of my favorite trilogies that another staff member mentioned on our internal thread, and I went, oh, why didn't I think of that? And it's, of course, Han Solo and Chewbacca and C-3PO and R2-D2. They're pretty darn classic, in my opinion. And the other pairing, too, that's related from TV and movies would be, of course, Kirk and Spock. Another classic. They're maybe not one of my favorite pairings. I would probably go for Han and Chewie over Kirk and Spock. But also total classics. What I love about Han and Chewie is that there's clearly so much backstory in the original trilogy, which is the only aspect of the Star Wars universe that I consider canon personally, but that's a conversation for another day. There's obviously all of this history between them that you can only get a glimpse of, that, they've been vagabonds of some sort or another when they enter the scene. And so it's just kind of intriguing to think about what their past was.
Both kind of like these old married couples. Like, they'll kind of like bicker with each other every now and then. Like, C-3PO, they'll be in danger, and R2 will do his little beep, 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 and C-3PO will be like, oh, heavens. And, he'll get all flustered and try and talk R2-D2 out of it. And yeah, it's both pairings of those are absolutely fantastic.
There's an element too around how they use language to create intimacy and that knowledge of another person. It's been a while. I am not putting my Star Wars knowledge up there, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I think other people can understand R2D2.
Yeah.
When he beeps, and like other people will know what the beeping means, but C-3PO is always right there with it. Do other people understand Wookieese?
I think only Han Solo does. I don't recall any, or maybe Lando Calrissian does
Maybe
as well.
Lando, but again, that's just another interesting. But in there, just the way that like it's, you know them so well that you're speaking their language. I don't know. I think there's something. I've thought about it for about 30 seconds, but I think there's something there.
It never occurred to me until this moment that, yeah, the one party in both of those, R2D2 and Chewie, we only understand what all of their talk is mediated through their partner for the audience.
Yeah,
I've never considered that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, but I don't see them. They're not made weak because of that. They're each quite, like, the strength of their character comes through, I think probably because of the way their partner, friend, like, respects and treats them. I think we experience that as the audience for sure. Oh, this is really interesting.
A couple of picks I had. And this could also go in the books category too, although I have not read the book, so I don't know the extent of necessarily the friendship in the book, but I thought of Sam and Frodo from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I'm sure that obviously that friendship does happen in the book, obviously, but in the movie, obviously we see it, and, you know, we have Sam carrying Frodo, you know, up the mountain with the ring and everything, and like Sam is, you know, he's basically going to give his life for Frodo if that's what he needs to do. And a friend of the show, Kate Gibson, I know she could talk about it much better than I could, but that's definitely one of the that's to me is one of the strongest friendships that we'll see in movies. And then this one too, like, you know, when we're talking about friendships in movies, it's hard not to think about like kind of like the old buddy cop movie, and I think of Riggs and Murtaugh from the Lethal Weapon movies, and also two characters who Riggs played by Mel Gibson in the first movie. We kind of forget that he's suicidal and everything. Murtaugh, played by Danny Glover, he's you know, this cop who's about to retire, and they're both kind of 1 foot out the door, and they come together, and essentially Riggs becomes a member really of his family and really takes him in and kind of gives him purpose in life. So yeah, that's what I think of when it comes to friends in movies, is kind of like the buddy cop genre anyway.
Elton from the Milner Library shared one that I think is worth pointing out. I think Tom Hanks's buddy from Castaway deserves a very special mention. Wilson helped poor Tom survive quite a few challenging obstacles during his extended island stay. Wilson, of course, being a volleyball. So I think, you know, we don't really have time to get into the question today, but can you have a friendship with an inanimate object? Castaway might argue that you can. So absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually rewatched that movie not that long ago, and that scene is still so emotional, where I know it's been like spoofed and lampooned like a million times now, where he loses Wilson, but like, man, you really feel for Tom Hanks in that part.
There were also lots of great suggestions from staff of the best friendships in books. Carrie from the Calder Branch said, Anne Shirley and Diana Barry. They are not only best friends, but kindred spirits from, of course, the Anne of Green Gable series. Vicky, is there a sci-fi friendship that you have from a book series or a book period?
I've got a fantasy one.
Okay.
This is where my single genre breaks down a little bit. Of course, Ron, Hermione, and Harry are a pretty classic grouping of friends. They, stick together through thick and thin, and starting from the beginning when they're pretty wee children yet, all the way through fighting Voldemort and so on. So again, just great representations of friendship through adolescence and the teen years and such, and dealing with some pretty profound external problems.
Yeah, another one very similar to that. It's actually my pick, but it's the Losers Club from It. So this is a group of 7 kind of preteen kids from the town of Derry, and in the summer of 1958, through different circumstances, they all become friends together, and unfortunately, they of course have to fight off the evil clown Pennywise, and they are brought back to evil Derry 27 years later in 1985, after one of their friends dies, and essentially because of Pennywise. So this is a group of people, or group of kids, that they're all from different backgrounds, and they don't necessarily know each other at the beginning of the book, but through different circumstances they do come together and reunite as adults. So that's kind of it's very similar to the Harry Potter trio there, and they have to come together and fight off really this evil character.
The characters I thought of maybe aren't facing such dangerous odds, but they're going through their own stuff in their own ways, and that's a trio of best friendships from children's books. Elephant and Piggy by Mo Willems. It is Gerald the elephant and Piggy the pig, who are opposites, but they are best friends who support each other through all kinds of things. George and Martha, a pair of hippopotamuses who have like mild adventures where they do various things together. Sometimes they fight or argue, but they always make up, spoiler. And one that I shared with Ilona from Collection Management, Frog and Toad. And as Ilona writes, they are helpful, considerate, and complete opposites. They also have quite a following online for their like fall wardrobe. I don't know. I love art that has animals wearing clothing, and there's something about frogs and toads specifically in clothing that just hits right there for me.
Yeah, it's funny because as soon as you say frog and toad, automatically you think of like their clothing and what they're wearing and everything.
Sweater vests, a little hat, a jacket.
Very fashionable for sure.
Yeah.
Can I share like a little fun fact, what I think is a fun fact that's related to Toad and Frog?
Yeah.
My family nickname is Toad. From Toad Hall, and it is literally the only thing that my mom and sisters call me. My dad will sort of shift between, even my niece and nephew call me Auntie Toad. So it is, I will be in a fancy store with my family and they'll be like, Toad, come look at this. So my mother has had many colleagues who have not known what her middle daughter's real name is. Even they have known me just as Toad. And it dates back to when I was a child. It just really, really stuck.
Nice. So if somebody comes up and calls you Toad, it's
a family member.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can see my mom struggle if she ever sees me in a work context. I can see it in her face. She struggles to call me Vicky and not be like, oh, Toad, blah, 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 in front of, my workmates.
And I just want to bring up one other book too, because I believe, Vicky, you've actually talked about this book on the show before, and this is from a friend of the show, Beth. She mentions Murderbot and ART in the Murderbot Diaries series by Martha Wells. So while they start off as adversarial, the relationship between Murderbot and ART, an artificial intelligence who runs a research transport, is really influential on Murderbot's storyline, and it's delightful to watch the two characters develop an unlikely friendship over the course of the series. And before we move on, I also want to mention, because it's not traditionally a book, but it's, a comic strip. We can't forget about Charlie Brown and Linus. Like most of the kids in their town are just terrible to Charlie Brown, but Linus is kind of like that great friend that Charlie Brown can confide in, and they just have their very deep conversations at that brick wall and talk about life. So I absolutely love the friendship between Charlie Brown and Linus.
I would also throw in Calvin and Hobbes.
Yes, absolutely, another great one. So we've talked really about, books, movies, TV, but are there any other friendships that maybe we missed out on today?
Two pairs of real life friendships. And I know that once we start getting into real life stuff, it's a bit dicier because recognizing they're not characters, but they kind of are in a way. The first one, probably the ultimate friendship goals, Oprah and Gail. Oprah Winfrey and Gail Kane. They've been friends for ages and ages. I love hearing them talk about their friendship and what they are to each other, and how their friendship has evolved over time. And, from Gail's perspective, what's it like to be friends with one of the most successful people in the world, who's also a person? And, just that whole dynamic. One of the things I think Oprah has said is that Gail is the only person who's never asked her for money, and just what it's meant to have each other as that friendship for so long. And another, I've been watching a little bit of Drag Race recently, RuPaul's Drag Race, and I have to say Rupaul and Michelle Visage, who is currently a guest on or a no, neither guest nor host, but judge is the word I'm looking for. Michelle Visage, a singer who was in groups in the 80s and 90s, has known RuPaul for decades. They have that camaraderie, that banter. They get each other, and the way that RuPaul clearly trusts and enjoys having Michelle Visage as part of the show. I love watching it as an audience member, and I love when they talk about, what it was like for them back in the 80s and 90s when they were hanging out and doing their things. So those have been, I like looking for some of those real life friendships that exist out there, because as great as the pop culture ones, the fictional ones are, these do exist in real life, and you can maybe emulate them and get them and do it. So, RuPaul, Michelle, Oprah, Gail, love it.
That Oprah Gail one is really interesting, and I didn't even think of that. And you're totally right. Like what you mentioned, how Oprah said that, Gail's the only person who's never asked her for money, and I can't imagine being, somebody like Oprah or, Bill Gates or whoever. There's somebody who has like ungodly sums of money, and trying to make like possibly friends as adults and being in this type of position. And like, not to say everybody will use you, but I mean, I imagine it does probably at times maybe get uncomfortable for them, and it's probably very hard for them to find like true friends.
I have a real world unlikely pairing that is my favorite friendship: Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg.
Oh, yeah.
I just love that, everything about that.
Yeah, I'm shocked that hasn't, like, they need to do like a reality series where they go on a road trip together or something. That would be so popular. It would be great. One recommendation, this is a video game one from past guest Mike, who's at our Calder branch, and this one has an Edmonton connection. So he said, from the game Mass Effect, which is produced locally by BioWare, Shepard and Garrus. He said that they're the greatest BFFs in any video game ever. So that's a great pick. And I've got a couple of my own here, also a video game one, Mario and Princess from the Super Mario Brothers games. Like, I don't know whether or not they're romantically involved at all. They don't have to be, and that's not super important, but like, if Princess gets kidnapped, no matter what Mario's doing, Mario is there for Princess. Like once he gets word that she's been kidnapped by evil Bowser, Mario's on the ball right away. And he is doing everything he can. He's avoiding fireballs and evil Goombas to try and rescue the princess. He's always there for her, and vice versa if the roles were reversed. So yeah, Mario and Princess. And Caroline, it's been a while since I made a wrestling reference.
I was hoping one was coming.
I know you're eagerly waiting. You're like, oh God, I hope Bryce has one. So we're talking about best friends. There's a different wrestling company other than WWE. It's called AEW, All Elite Wrestling, which is great. And there's a tag team there, a wrestling stable called Best Friends, and it features Trent Beretta, Chucky T, and Orange Cassidy. They're kind of an 80s 90s throwback. And what I love about this trio is when they're having a match together, Trent's mom Sue drives them to the ring in her Honda Odyssey. So it's amazing. You should look it up on YouTube. They're one of the most entertaining tag teams to watch. And yeah, so if you're not familiar with Best Friends in AEW, go give them a watch.
Well, I definitely will be checking that out. Before we get to our roundtable questions, Bryce, can you let our listeners know what is coming up on our next episode, which is going to be released on Friday, August 26th, which also happens to be my birthday, Boxing Day.
Well, happy early birthday Boxing Day to you. Do you
Thank
do
you.
anything super exciting on birthday Boxing Day?
Birthday Boxing Day? No, I think that some people, they go in on like birthday week, birthday month, and if that works for them, that's great. Myself, I really just stick to the essentials of birthday eve, birthday, and birthday Boxing Day. Birthday Boxing Day being, a little quieter to reflect and, think about just how great the day was. So
Nice.
yeah. And this year I'll be doing it with a podcast.
There we go. So good news to parents. Kids are going to be going back to school soon. So we thought that on our next episode of Overdue Finds that we could take a look back at our favorite fictional schools, teachers from pop culture. So from Springfield Elementary to Faber College, we're going to be sharing our favorite pop culture schools. And Caroline, you kind of hinted at this during our last episode. There might be a new television show that we could be talking about.
A very popular one that, seems to have broken through with some great characters and storylines. So I'm really excited to talk about school. Our first roundtable question: who was your first best friend, Vicky?
So I'd say it was probably my little sister. She's 3 years younger than me, and I was just so excited to have her around. Except she was much less into it than I was. She was a biter, and so she would often bite me when I would go in for a hug, and my mom would say, well, just don't hug her, leave her alone. But I would still risk the fangs for some sisterly love. As I got a little bit older, that definitely faded some. We're, as an adult, we're totally on better terms, but, the teen years.
Bryce, how about you?
I didn't think about this one. I've got younger brothers, but we always seem to be fighting. So I definitely don't think I would have considered them to be best friends. But yeah, I think I had to go back and think about maybe like kindergarten and the first grade. I remember I was at a different school, and my friend Leo, I remember him being my best friend in like kindergarten and grade 1, and our family moved to a different part of town, and then ended up getting a new best friend at the other school. But it's funny because this was in Medicine Hat, and it's a small city, but like it seemed like I moved essentially a world away, and this is pre-internet and everything. So yeah, buddy Leo would have been my first best friend. How about you, Caroline?
My first best friend, Lauren, she was 6 months older than me to the day. Our families were friends. She had some older sisters, and she was the youngest of three. I'm the oldest of two, and us grew up being best friends with each other. We kind of had, I would say, an elephant and piggy dynamic. Me being the elephant, a bit more reserved, a bit quieter. She was and is outgoing, always getting into stuff, huge smile, just a great, fun, awesome best friend.
Nice.
Our next question: what is your favorite song about friendship? And we had some lists online to help narrow it down if you needed some inspiration. But Vicky, what's your favorite friendship song?
I have to admit, I am the worst person to ask this question of.
I do know this about you. I am just remembering this.
I pretty much never listen to music, and so my knowledge of music is super limited, and so I really couldn't think of it. I guess the thing I thought of was the happy birthday song, because, you know, it's a nice thing that we sing. Like, I think about the context in which it's sung and how everybody knows it, and it just brings up warm feelings and such, but that's the best I can do.
I like it. I'll take it.
So Vicky, I have to ask you, like, I listen to music while I'm at work, like, all the time. So, like, do you listen to the radio when you drive, or are you just listening to talk radio, or
podcasts and audiobooks? And before I got into podcasts and audiobooks, silence. Wow. Music just fades completely out of my consciousness. So, yeah, extremely rare for me to ever willingly put music on.
Wow. So
I know, I feel like I'm missing some part of my brain. I can see that it does something for other people that it does not do to me.
So what you're saying is, if we do another music episode, probably not to maybe invite you for that one?
Yeah, not my strength.
Okay, so Bryce, you listen to a ton of music.
Yeah.
How many of those are friendship bops, and what's your favorite?
Yeah, I'm terrible with like song lyrics. I just like kind of the beat or whatever. But even without having to look at those lists that you sent, the first song that popped into my head was "You're My Best Friend" by Queen. It's a great song. In the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't think this part is necessarily real, but on the album with Bohemian Rhapsody, the record producer, of course, wanted "You're My Best Friend" to be the big single and not Bohemian Rhapsody. So, but yeah, that song to me, it brings a smile on my face whenever I hear it. Caroline, how about you?
I also didn't look at these lists, so I'm glad I didn't spend too much time trying to find them. But mine is a fake song that only exists, well, it exists in the world, but it's from Family Guy. It's called "Friendship is the Best Thing Ever," aka the Friendship Song. And it's a song that the character Stewie on Family Guy writes for Miley Cyrus to sing and perform. And it's just like, it's about a minute long, and the hook that gets me, and I will sing this constantly, is "Friendship is the best ship ever, except for best friendship. It's just a little better. You mean a lot better. I mean a lot better, yeah." So like, that is, I get that stuck in my head. The part about best friendship, you mean a lot better. It's just very, very catchy. And yeah, Miley Cyrus does a great job with it.
I was not expecting a Family Guy reference from you, so
this is also the closest I have come to singing on the podcast. that my recitation of it had a bit of a lilt to it, and I'm like, oh, Caroline, this is dangerous ground. Thank you so much for joining us today, Vicky. This has been awesome to talk about these great friendships. Is there anything that you would like to let our listeners know about?
Well, at my branch, the Castle Downs branch, if you're not familiar with it, I like to say that behind us is the crown jewel of the north side, which is Beaumaris Lake. It's this wonderful drainage lake in the city. It's the largest one and the first one from the city. So we're actually running something called Under the Sky Storytime on Thursdays from 10:30 until 11. Families are welcome to come, and we're running that until the end of August. And it's been so popular that seniors that live in the condo sort of right near where we host this story time, they have stood on their balconies and clapped at the end of it. So, I think people should come check that out if you want a nice outdoor program facing the beautiful Beaumaris Lake.
Lovely. We had Nicole, who also works at the Castle Downs location, your branch. She was on our episode for Stand By Me when we talked about that. And she also talked about how lovely the lake is there. So it's definitely a great feature that you should check out. And then also check out the Castle Downs branch. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. So make sure that you're subscribed so that you get all of our new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love getting reviews. And if you can, tell a friend about the show, maybe even your best friend.
Oh, totally. You have to let your bestie know about this one. So don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes. And as Caroline mentioned, we love to hear from our listeners. You can reach us on Twitter at EPL.ca and use the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds, or you can email us at podcast@EPL.ca. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.